Airbnb is dead in 2026. I keep hearing this. Here's what the data actually shows. Over the last few years, short-term rental supply has grown nearly 90% compared to 2021. Average revenue has flattened or declined in many markets, sometimes 5% down, sometimes 10. In a handful of markets, it's been declining every single year for 3 straight years. Put those two facts together, and it's easy to call Airbnb dead. But that conclusion is built on averages, and averages hiding what's actually happening. Stay with me, because once you see what the data actually shows, the whole picture looks completely different. Welcome back to the STR Loophole Show. I'm Arda Birkan, and let's get into it. Most investors look at averages: average revenue, average occupancy, average nightly rate. They see flat or declining numbers and walk away. But when you break markets down by percentile instead of just the average, a very different picture shows up. In the same markets where average revenue is down, the top 25% of listings are holding relatively steady. The top 10% are doing 10 to 15% more year over year. Same markets, same demand, completely different outcomes depending on the property. That tells us something critical. Saturation isn't spread evenly, it's concentrated. When you zoom in at the property level, the listings that are struggling all look the same: average home, average layout, average amenities. All competing for the same guests with no clear reason for a guest to choose one over the next listing in the search results. So when people say Airbnb is saturated in 2026, what they are really describing is this: the market is saturated with undifferentiated properties. Once you see that, the question isn't whether Airbnb still works. The question is where saturation is not happening. The goal isn't to avoid markets with competition. The goal is to avoid buying the same property everyone else is buying inside those markets. That's where saturation actually lives. And right now, the biggest mistake I see is what I call chasing. Investors hear about a market on social media. They scroll Airbnb for a few minutes, throw a data tool in for safe measure, check the revenue numbers, convince themselves they found the winner. That approach won't work in 2026. Take Nashville. Average revenue is down year over year. But when you filter by 4-bedroom properties with a pool in specific zip codes, those listings are dominating the market, average by 20 to 30%. So the market isn't dead. The average property in that market is dead. Those are two different things. To analyze a market the right way in 2026, you have to start at the property level. Which bedroom counts actually win in that specific market? Which amenities move the needle and which ones just add cost? Which properties consistently sit in the top percentiles, not the average? The data is clear. Average properties are getting crushed. Top-tier properties are still getting booked. Here's the other big issue: overpaying. In a more competitive environment, paying too much kills your returns faster than anything else. It doesn't matter how well the property does if you bought it at the wrong price. A lot of investors buy an average home at a premium price, then try to force results with design and furniture after the fact. That's backwards. Design doesn't create value if the underlying property isn't positioned to produce. It just makes an expensive mistake look nicer. You can't justify a bad purchase by saying it will cash flow. Cash flow can hide a lot of mistakes. What matters is the return relative to what you actually spend, and whether that's supported by the market, not a renovation budget. Knowing your maximum purchase price before you ever write an offer is non-negotiable in 2026. Now, here's what most short-term rental creators never go deep enough. And for physicians and high-income professionals, this changes the entire math. When you buy a short-term rental and material parts paid in it, the depreciation from that property can offset your W-2 income directly, not in future years, the year you buy. Here's what that looks like in practice. Let's say a surgeon earning $600,000 a year is paying an effective blended rate of around 42%, filing Marriott jointly. They buy a $800,000 short-term rental. A cost segregation study, which is a detailed breakdown of the property that accelerates depreciation, generates around $200,000 in depreciation in year one. That $200K offset their W-2 income directly. At 42%, that's $84,000 in tax savings in year one alone. Not a cash flow projection. That's money that they don't send to the IRS this year. Most investors never factor that in. They look at cash flow and stop there. But for a high earner, the tax benefit alone is often larger than the annual cash flow. And when you combine both, you are looking at a total first-year return that almost no other asset class can match. So instead of asking whether Airbnb is saturated, ask the right questions. Where are investors not looking? Where is demand still strong but supply hasn't caught up? Where are the mismatches between what guests want and what most listings are actually offering? Those gaps exist in every market people love to call saturated. But when you find them, when you stop going with your gut and start going with the data, the investors doing well right now aren't chasing trends or copying what worked 4 years ago. They're buying with discipline, underwriting conservatively, and finding properties that earn their way into the top of the market instead of hoping to get there. So, is Airbnb dead in 2026? No. But average Airbnb investing is struggling. The gap between those two things comes down entirely to how you buy and what you buy. If you're a high-income professional who wants to understand what this looks like for your specific tax situation, link is in the description. Book a call with us. We will show you exactly what the numbers look like for your income levels. Like and subscribe if you got value from this. See you on the next one.